Hey everybody, Dave Costello here, founder and CEO of Jetpack Workflow and host of Growing Your Firm podcast. Today's guest is a repeat return interviewee. It is Chad Davis. The last time we talked to him was almost 7 years ago. They're a 13-person remote accounting firm. And of course, Chad is the co-founder and partner at LiveCA. Now, since then, he's grown to over 100 team members. And he's started to build out, which is the first we've ever seen, development team at LiveCA to build out a lot of different tools and applications, both for the industry and internal use. Really excited to dig into the future of low code and no code, the implications for your accounting firm, and so much more. But first, Chad, welcome back to the show.
Good to be here, David. It's nice to see you 7 years later, and you're still looking the same and young as ever.
That's what I was gonna say. It's amazing. We both look younger than before. I think the true trick is to go remote, and then all of a sudden, you start to age backwards. We all become Benjamin Buttons.
Yeah, growing beards doesn't hurt either.
All right. Well, for folks that didn't watch the first interview, just to set some context about the firm, and we're going to dig into the things you built out, why you built the dev team in the first place, and we'll talk about some fun freebies for the audience as well. But for folks not familiar with LiveCA, give us a look at, from the accounting side, who do you serve? What services do you provide?
Yeah, it's changed over the years, but the 10-second version is we started in like 2012, one of the first ones in Canada. There's a few early players there that really shaped the industry in that country. And over the years, we literally learned who we do good work for. And then about 3 or 4 years ago, really honed in on those people. And today that group is, companies with at least $2 million in revenue or above, or funding that is at least 12 months of their runway. So, well-funded, either scale up or non-scale up clients, but in a place where they have complexity or they really value having a full team versus hiring out a team themselves.
And the spectrum of services, do they run the full gambit, or is there a service that you don't take on?
Yeah, I mean, you have so many good firms that work with JetFlow doing all kinds of really interesting stuff. So we're not really that different. I'm really happy with what we're offering right now because it is quite standardized and expected. So there's accounts payable, payroll, bookkeeping, tax, M&A work, trust work, CFO type of work. We know that's the biggest buzzword in the industry. I won't dare say the word advisory, but trying to help people as much as we possibly can. I think that's what a lot of firms do, and they call it different things. But the area of the firm that I've spent the most time on over the years is in the technology side. And that's what I'm really excited to chat about here is, how we decided to create that development team, and then what are the results of that, a year in, kind of doing it stealth and trying to test and see if it would work.
Perfect. Final question before we dig into that team, because again, I haven't heard any other firm doing this. But from 13 to 100, was there a specific year where you had exceptional growth, or have you had essentially high growth, but it's been steady over the last 6-7 years?
Yeah, I have those stats. I mean, early days, any money was good money, and we used that to fund the growth of the team. That eventually fails and breaks because you can't do everything for everyone. So the years that were the most memorable was 2018. So about 5 or 6 years in, when we politely moved off 200 or 300 customers and added 40 and ended up being over $1 million more in revenue that year. It was insane. So it's just a testament to like really knowing who you want to serve. And then I think there was a lot of confidence on the part of all of the managers and leadership members, team members, to say no and be part of that offboarding. It didn't happen all at once. That's why I say 2018, because it started in 2018, but it may not have finished until sometime in 2019. But it was it's a really cool year.
Well, and we'll link up. I think this solidifying your client base, niching down, and then offboarding your client base. I mean, we've seen it time and time again where it drives top line and bottom line, like, which is the magical thing, which people are surprised about. To segue into the development team, so you're at 100 plus. What is the breakdown right now of the organization? How many developers do you have, and then what's it look like from admin? What's it look like from leadership to certain teams even at a very high level?
Very high level, like 4% is the development team, because we have 4 out of 100. I think there's like 102 or 105 or something like that right now, but there's it's a very low percentage because it started last year with me tinkering, and that tinkering turned into a plan. That plan turned into moving people around. And again, we can get into that whenever you want, but it was really hard to just do something and launch it when other people have full-time jobs and commitments. So it did take a lot of planning, and we eventually set a date for people to start moving over into the other roles. We had to backfill, and then it became live. I mean, really live just meant that we were public about it, but it took a lot of planning.
So did you have developers already at the firm before you moved into these 4? Okay, so these 4 were net new hires, but there was still management and leadership oversight over the team that you needed to have capacity for.
That's right. Like our product manager, Matt Kennedy, he's a machine. He's so smart, and he's been with the firm for 5 years plus. And he started as a bookkeeper, became one of the best bookkeepers, then turned into a trainer, then led the training team, and then from the training team came over here to the development side. So from bookkeeper to no code, low code visual developer inside of a few years, it just goes to show you that experience is not why you should hire somebody. it's all about drive and curiosity and personality, and Matt embodies everything that you would want in somebody who has drive and optimism, and just he's a really good guy.
I love it. Well, what sparked, so you started tinkering. What did you see when you were tinkering that said, we need to double down on this and start to build out a team? What's the opportunity you saw?
Sure. Then look, there's a lot of accountants that are playing in this, and it's so cool to be part of that, because it felt like in 2012 and 2013, people were tinkering with the idea of using online software. And like, you would know that better than anybody else with an online project management system, that it's hard to convince someone or to do it right, and you iterate. So we noticed that a lot of our customers had problems operationally around the way the data moves or the way that they get their data. And we were always that answer by doing things either manually or techie. There's a lot of great spreadsheet and Google Sheet and app script work that our team has done, and there's some really smart people that do that. However, it wasn't always automatic. There was imports, there was exports, there's still some manipulation, and a lot of the things that people were spending a lot of time on could be done through automations. And I'll remember that the first time we saw something was when a really high profile medical tech startup providing virtual care had hundreds of contractor invoices that they were keeping track of in Google Sheets. And then someone had to format that to get it into Xero. And then there was intercompany and multi-jurisdictional issues with the US and Canada. So there's 2 different Xero files, and it was just a mess to like manually do that. So I didn't know how to write scripts and app script in JavaScript. So I went to Upwork and I said, can someone build me a really cool script, very easy to use, that allows someone to drop down, validate a field that just says, yes, like I want to put this over to Xero. And when that does that, go up to the menu, and for everything that says yes, push it over into somewhere. And I was just kind of learning webhooks at the time. And I just said, just send it to a webhook. That way I can grab the data later. 24 hours later, I had a script that somebody wrote for me. And then we started playing with the data in Integromat, got it into Xero perfectly, dealt with all the tax issues and the currency issues and the multi-line issues. And inside of probably a week of tinkering, now the bookkeepers go in and say yes to all 200 or 300 items. And then inside of a couple minutes, they are all within the Xero account. It's reconciled back to Brex for the US. And then it does the intercompany transactions back in Xero in Canada, marks them off as a payment. Everything is nice and tidy. And then it runs a script at the end to show us any issues that occurred or any fringe cases we need to like be aware of that we didn't build for, does validation, and then it was done. So I didn't mean to talk so long about that specific situation, but it was such a cornerstone like milestone for what we were doing that it was a eureka moment. And ever since, we've been just digging into issues like that and have maybe done, I don't know, 50 to 100 more automations like that for clients, and they're really happy. We're really happy, and that's why the dev team is growing to support that.
Got it. And so that early use case, that was really eye-opening. Sounds like you were able to have that conversation with this client about their existing workflow, or it surfaced somewhat to your radar. You put out this, you designed what the ideal automation would look like. You went to a platform called Upwork. You posted this project, and just curious, even if it's round numbers, I mean, what did you pay that developer to write this script to largely solve the problem? Like, do you remember like your time and
Yeah.
cost investment at that time, right?
That script was not the whole thing. That was just a script to say, send me a notification that something happened in Google Sheets. That was it. It cost me $45 US. That was it. And I told him exactly how I wanted it designed, how I wanted the menu to look. And then after I saw what he did, we've amended that script multiple times to do everything that we want. And like, that's now a really like core element of getting stuff out of Google Sheets without having to deal with buttons or watching rows and dealing with all of the Google restrictions that occur with standard Zapier and Integromat triggers. And if I have any advice to people kind of starting out, yeah, use the built-in watch triggers to understand it, but you're eventually going to get frustrated with timing and with duplicates and with just so much work that work on webhooks. Like that is the quickest and most instant way of getting data out of one thing and into another.
Yeah, well, there's clearly a massive client benefit, and the fact that you solved this for this startup and for many others since then gives you huge retention benefits. I mean, why would they ever not work with a firm like yours that had solved this problem so thoroughly? But then how do you think about, you know, the value you're creating? Are you charging a premium for clients to then access that automation, or are you saying, look, because I don't need to have an admin person on our side do this for 20 hours a week, it's just a great way to free up their time to do something more valuable and better margins for us?
Yeah, I think a lot of accountants and just people in general think very linearly, like, oh, this is a cost on my end, therefore I should charge for it. This is my time, therefore I should charge for it. I've always either made enemies or just lost friends over that disagreement, because everybody is part of the sales department. So whether it's the tech side or the support side or the accounting side, if we can do something that creates a more sticky relationship with somebody that leads to more referrals or less time spent or just a really good feeling about us, and it takes us, who cares, like, I don't know, 5-10 hours, that will pay dividends if it's the right type of customer, the right type of stuff. So we've probably only charged a handful, like under 10 or 15 people for the extra work, because it was maybe really hard, or it was, you know, it helped like true up the pricing that should have been trued up earlier. Just, we look at relationships on a really holistic level and not just time in, time out. And there's good and bad things about that, but that's the camp that I've got to fall into.
Yeah, makes sense. For the folks that you do have today, is it all for internal and client benefit, or do you have accounting firms, you know, since you've made it public, do you have accounting firms saying, hey, can you build me this? Can I utilize your mindset, your process design, your solution design? or is it all for clients, all for internal efficiency and satisfaction?
Yeah, I think we're just keeping it internal, but I've, a lot of friends that haven't talked to in a few years have reached out just to see what was going on, which was really cool. But I don't think we should. This probably isn't anything too new. There's other firms that are like using this and have used it for years, and like who knows to what depth, but the premise is the same. Like everybody cares about saving time and they care about tinkering, and they think about the tech piece because it's not the hard part about having a pricing conversation. So like we're not strangers to the hard pricing conversations, and that's definitely another element of making a good relationship. But most of the people that have either reached out, I've pushed them over to Jason Statz's course on Airtable and no code, and just letting them know about the Realize community. And that's a really great resource for accountants to get together and talk about this type of stuff. So if you haven't checked out Jason's stuff, definitely do that. He's a great guy.
Yeah, I love it. Well, we've interviewed Jason twice. We're going to link it up in the show notes. So if you're like, oh, I want to check out Jason's community or see what this guy's all about, we did a great tech talk with him a couple quarters ago. So we'll link it up at jetpackworkflow.com/blog with your interview, of course. So what prompted you? Let's talk a little bit about something you built for the community that I don't think maybe your clients were hammering you for, but you ended up building out this job board. Tell us a little bit more about it. Why did you do it? How long did it take? And what are you hoping the impact is for the accounting community?
Yeah, first. So we're trying to treat everything we build as a learning opportunity. So we had not really built, well, we had, but we hadn't built a really full functioning client, like public facing application. It was all internal stuff that we were building. So we wanted more experience around user management, email alerts, customizable searches, dealing with like larger amounts in the database, a lot more conditions around like if this is a type of user versus not. Like, what is like our largest issue right now? And it's like when people find a firm that they're really happy with, like they wish they would have gotten there early. And the amount of people that we chat with that get hired here, like I just wish I would have known that firms like this existed. And like we live in a world where that's still a thing. Like the people that listen to your podcast, like they all know what are like some great firms, what makes a great firm, and like this is the world we live in. But what is that? 2% of firms across the whole nation? Like it's very small. So to hit something big, there just was never a place where you could say, I'd like to search firms or search for jobs that are from that sort of like-minded 2 to 5% of the accounting population that kind of considers themselves as innovators. And like, what a cool opportunity to help other firms attract the right people, but at the same time, like, learn a new tool. So we built the whole thing on Bubble, and the version that you're looking at now, like the core system might have taken a couple weeks to build part-time. So like hours, like under 30 to do the whole thing. And like, that's just a huge testament to what you can release on platforms like Bubble. And we should probably talk about the weird names of no code, low code, and visual development, because it's all kind of BS right now. It doesn't really mean anything, and it's kind of gimmicky and buzzwordy. But I'll stop there, and maybe you could direct the direction you'd like to take this next.
Yeah, totally. So you built out this job board. Can you drop the URL really quick so people can also check it out? Because right now it's free postings if you're looking for talent.
Yeah, so the URL is really tough. It's cloudaccountingjobs.com. And like you said, it's free. There's already some really cool firms that have posted. There's things like System 6, the northern part of the US. You've got like Joe's, Good Measure Financial, got a couple Canadian firms like Think Accounting and Blueprint, and it's open to the whole world. So if there's South African firms or Australia and New Zealand firms that want to post in, it's all there. There's all kinds of those country specific apps. And this isn't one of these things where I just wanted to say, okay, here's the job and like go deal with it. I wanted there to be a way to sort through the things that matter to people that are looking for jobs, like vacation policies and retirement perks which apps are used. Is this a Zero firm? Is this a QBO firm? Is this a Sage firm? Is it both? Do they use tools like Jetpack Workflow or Google? Are they a Microsoft firm? Are they a Teams firm or a Slack firm? Like, if you are in this sort of space and you're looking, you probably aren't living on job boards all day long, and you kind of just want to know if something cool pops up. So I personally have a few beliefs that are built into this app, and is probably the reason why a lot of people aren't using it right now, is because I believe in salary transparency. I believe in experience not being the cornerstone of why you should hire somebody. And I believe that there should be a lot more openness and transparency about why you should join some place. And bullet points on a job description might do it, but there's some other ways to do it as well. So if you want to set up an alert as a passive job seeker, you can do that on any of the pages. And from there, you can set up the frequency, if it's daily, weekly, or monthly, what country you want it for, essentially all of the fields, right? The salary range, sorry, a minimum salary that you want, if it's remote, hybrid, or a physical location. You can even go down and say, show me all the jobs that use QuickBooks Online that are remote in the United States, over 80 grand a year, that have 4 weeks of vacation and profit sharing. And just leave that alert up for the whole year. And then as those jobs come in, set it to daily. It's a pretty specific alert. And now you don't have to live on job boards, but if something pops up, you might be like, that might be something to look into. And that's what I wanted to build this for, is for those passive job seekers and for accountants that want to post not just full-time jobs, but part-time jobs, freelance gig projects, right? So you have an inventory implementation that you need help with, you need coverage for tax season, put up a project for 3 months with an hourly rate, and people can get notified of those. So now it becomes a place where accountants can get jobs from other accountants too, without having to be a full-time hire. The potential is pretty.
I think that is.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I think that is one of the most interesting parts too, is like, even if you're a firm owner listening, so it's cloudaccountingjobs.com, and you could go there, and because there's attributes in there, you can also get some pretty interesting industry intelligence. You can see how folks are positioning their firm. And look, I love your premise. It feels like, a rising tide lifts all boats. And so you could see, how, I'm assuming some of the early adopters of the platform, just given your network and reputation, are really modern firms, bleeding edge or leading edge firms. You can see how what their salary ranges are, what their benefits are, what products they're using, how they talk about the firm. So of course I would encourage you to, it's just a great place for you to go list, because frankly, it's free. So we're all struggling to get talent. We're all struggling to find the right people. So that's, I feel like, a layup for people listening. But you could also go there and kind of get some industry benchmarking on what other people are doing. Because as we're making this shift, I think if you're in a firm, you had a lot of localized data. Okay, this is what we pay accountants in Pittsburgh. So many firm owners are now struggling to say, what does that mean if we're hiring nationwide? Like, we don't care what city or state they're in, and how does that change how the benefits package, the compensation range? And of course, there's reports and sites that you could get that from. That's great. Go ahead and do those. But this is like live time data of what firms are actually doing to compete every single day. So I love the premise of going to the site and checking it out. You launched it. How early it is in the launch? Like, when did you launch the platform?
Like a week or 10 days ago, maybe 12 days or something. So it's super new. And like, I'm looking at the site right now and just seeing if anybody else oh, look at that. So that's really cool. The folks over at High Rock Accounting with Liz Mason and all that crew, they just posted a job for an accounting specialist 2 hours ago, which is really great. So it just shows you like the quality of the firms that are posting here are always those like early adopters. And probably a lot of the people that are listening to this podcast are also the same. So like, I want this to be free for a long time, so that there's an equal amount of jobs as there is like job seekers. And to get that massive influx, you can't be charging the firms big dollars when they could just use that money on LinkedIn too. So we're going to keep this free for a while until there's like a real big massive switch for this. And I'm going to try to do as much as I can to promote this to industry, to universities, to people using the jobs, and really encourage them to do those job alerts. And just in case you wanted to follow along around like what's being linked or what the roadmap looks like, there is a roadmap page. And like right now, some of the things that people are like that they can see is that like we launched with a LinkedIn sign up, which was really cool. So that you don't have to go through the username and password. There's magic link logins. So like if you're playing in the no code space, like that's really fun to work in. Automatic Twitter posts. So we're just kind of worrying through that. But the most exciting thing that we're working on right now is when a new company signs up and puts up their job, they also have the ability to answer some questions over video through a tool called Video Ask. And those answers will then be created into a video that shows on the company profile and on every job page, so that if you are a job seeker, now you're creating more of a dimension of what a firm looks like. And then it all gets linked back to their website. So I'm hoping that gives a bit of a differentiation on the job board as well to other things.
Yeah, great. Well, to switch gears briefly, final question before we wrap up and link everything up. If somebody wants to, you're a listener, you're as a firm owner, partner, or leader, and they kind of want to get started in the low code space, you mentioned Jason's Realize community, which is great. We're going to link it up. Is there a platform, like would you consider Bubble a good place to tinker around, Zapier, Airtable? Is there a great way for people to start kind of testing the waters, posting a little something on Upwork? Like what is the best way to start tinkering in this space?
Yeah, like I think the answer differs for everybody, but for some practical advice, I spend probably 6 months learning webhooks, watching videos, joining communities, getting an idea of how Airtable scripts work. And at the time, there were some really great communities, but now there is a lot more. And if you spent, I don't know, 8 or 10 hours on YouTube, you probably would have the same knowledge that I got in 6 months. So there's a couple communities that are, maybe if you're like a tech head and you really want to get into the deeper things, you could start with there's a community called Code Meets No Code. So with Aaron Kornbilt and Connor Finlinson, they're putting together these things that say, hey, if you know Airtable and you know Zapier and you know Integromat and you know Webflow high level, here are some scripts and some ways that you can connect these that may not be really popular ways to do that. There's other communities where you can join where, yeah, it is just the same as like, hey, what's a webhook? How can I grab a data point and then gather all that data point in the second step? That's really nice. So there's like the no code dev community, there's all kinds of courses. But if it was me starting off from scratch, I would still do the YouTube thing. I probably would join a couple communities for a couple $100, and then definitely not start with Bubble. Bubble is way too, it's essentially code. It's just a no code way of putting your code to use. So it's overkill. So start with Zapier, start with Integromat, start with Airtable, all the tried and true ones, or tried and true and tested ones. Really get your head around how things move around. And then when you start hitting limitations with things like Softer and Stacker, which are front ends to Airtable, and like you really want to get into like things like SQL or more customized user management stuff, then you might go to things like Retool or Bubble, or just things that take a lot more code, and then have people around you to support you. So that's why the Realize community is kind of cool. Jason put up a developer on demand kind of thing. So if you have a question, you can ask that there. And I know this wasn't meant to be like the Realize promo show, but I think for people that are starting off, it's a really great place to get your feet wet.
Love it. Well, if somebody wants to reach out and say thank you for coming on, maybe follow up with questions, what is the best way for them to connect with you?
Probably Twitter. On Twitter, I'm posting all like the little updates around what's happening on the job board and what's happening in the no code development team here, with little bite-sized videos. So I don't even know what my Twitter name is. I know you're gonna make me look at it. It is, let's see here, @Chad Davis. I should know that.
At Chad Davis. Love it. Well, Chad, thanks for coming on. For people listening, we went through a lot of communities, a lot of links, a lot of examples. You have the free job board. We're going to talk about it. People should post there. If you're running around and moving around, you couldn't write everything down we talked about today, go to jetpackworkflow.com/blog, jetpackworkflow.com/blog. We'll do a full write-up, all the links. If you enjoyed this show, leave us a 5-star review. It helps us get the word out. If you really love this show, share it with a fellow firm owner that's thinking about these concepts and can help illuminate maybe some of the next steps that they should take. Chad, thanks again for coming on.
Thanks, David. See you soon.